Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with the latest WWE edition of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here to break down everything that happened in the world of WWE over the last week. However, what we will not be providing you on this episode of Getting Over is a preview for WWE Saturday night's main event. Instead, that preview will occur this Thursday on our next episode, along with our breakdowns of NXT and AEW. And the reason for the delay, the change, the switch, whatever you want to call it, is because once again, for the second straight week, criticize him all you want, vintage Chris Vanini will not be part of this Tuesday episode, but frankly, it's for a great reason. He got the opportunity to cover France against Spain in the World Cup semifinal on Tuesday when we normally tape this show, and therefore he's just not available to record his thoughts on WWE. But we're going to do exactly what we did last week, except we're going to extend it a little further. He does not have a 30-minute window on Thursday to share his WWE thoughts. Rather, he will provide all of his thoughts on the week in WWE, as much as we can muster, to open Thursday's show. We will also give you your WWE Saturday night's main event preview. And then, of course, Silver King will take you the rest of the way, talking NXT and AEW. For this episode of Getting Over, you're stuck with the Silver King. You're going one-on-one with the great one. But guess what? That's okay for a couple reasons. First, most importantly,
this is my show. My show.
I'm the main character, okay, of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Let's not forget that. But secondly, there is an absolute ton to discuss in the world of WWE, both on and off the screen, and we are going to get to all of it before this episode is out. As we get into it, though, allow Silver King off the top to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So please, folks,
stop being marks for yourselves and go back to being a mark for me.
Go back to being a mark for the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, vintage Chris Vanini, the Getting Over Wrestling podcast in its totality. Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show on YouTube. You can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews. If you hit the link in our profiles, you can join our free Slack channel, subscribe to the show. There's a lot of other cool things you can do. Make sure you follow us on social media at Getting Overcast. As I mentioned, there is an absolute ton for us to discuss. The main event and the good, the bad, and the ugly, both of those are coming up.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
And there's a solid handful of topics for us to discuss before we get into what actually happened on WWE television. Let's run through a stupid item to kick this off, okay? For those of you who are not regularly on social media, there's a trend called concern trolling, where someone brings up a topic pretending to care about it, when in reality, they're just addressing it to purposefully be negative. And that happened earlier this week about the John Cena Classic, where a talking head who was unfortunately considered a prominent one in this industry, I don't understand why, for anyone who listens to them speak, they questioned out loud why there has not been progress on the John Cena Classic, and then perpetuated the negative presumption, because every presumption about WWE these days is negative, never positive, that John Cena announced the John Cena Classic in the spur of the moment at Backlash because WWE believed fans would be mad if he came out there and spoke about Club WWE. That is not reality. Club WWE was announced and promoted before WrestleMania. Just yesterday, July 13th, a Monday, in the middle of the month, they announced the details. Backlash was May 6th. To believe that line of thinking, you have to accept that WWE delayed a planned business announcement and cost themselves money for 2 months because they were so worried fans might complain a little bit more than they already complain. Again, that's just not reality. And then there's the belief that Cena went out there and threw out a half-baked idea without specifics. WWE had no idea what the John Cena Classic was going to be, but they just threw him on that show to sell tickets to Backlash. Now, I agree that the idea was not fully baked at the time Cena announced it, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that, given the way Cena explained it. At the same time, it was not half-baked. It was not invented out of thin air. He explained about 80% of it, in detail, mind you. And there's only 2 questions remaining coming out of that announcement. Cena specified the event will feature matches involving WWE and NXT talent to put the focus on younger superstars. He said, at the end of the event, an MVP would be crowned by a fan vote. I'm not sure what else you need to know in May, let alone July. He also alluded to the fact that it would happen at the end of the year, presumably in December, when WWE's calendar is wide open and the event can be held near the anniversary of his last match. That's the overview. He laid all of that out there. The last match show received positive reviews, and WWE is capitalizing on the concept and their ability to use Cena as a focal point of a show to sell tickets. What is so hard to understand? Why is this fervor for more details existing when we are still 5 months out from the event happening? Should WWE be going real deep on John Cena Classic information while building for SummerSlam? Sometimes I wonder whether people have working brains anymore. There are 2 unknowns. That's it, just 2 about the Classic. 1, the date and location. We just found out about Survivor Series War Games on Monday. This is happening after that, so not announcing the date or location is fine. 2, how the fan vote will transpire. Cena said in a more recent interview, he wants to make the vote so that it doesn't get hijacked. Possibly so only people in attendance can vote, maybe only people who are in attendance and are Club WWE members can vote, whatever the case might be. That is literally all we are waiting to find out. The only reason this is a topic of conversation is concern trolling. And it's insane to me that people who have large audiences, larger than ours, listening to them, they feed into that shit rather than contextualizing it and understanding situations like we just did here. Yes, they announced something very far in advance. No, it was not 100% detailed, but it also wasn't half-baked. They laid out exactly what it was going to be, and John Cena said in the moment, we still have some T's to cross and some I's to dot to make sure that this is perfect. And that's where we stand now in July, just like we did in May at the John Cena Classic. If we get to like November 1st and there's no further information about the John Cena Classic, okay, maybe I'll be a little bit frustrated. But if they announce a date and, Cena comes out and says, hey, this is the way we're going to be doing this and so on and so forth, you're talking about 6 to 8 weeks. That's all advance notice you need for, I was going to say a tournament. It's not even a tournament. It's just a special show of random matches. And he's laid this out for us. I don't understand why that is so hard to comprehend. Speaking of Survivor Series War Games, WWE announced Monday it's going to be held at the home of those absolute cheaters, the Houston Astros in Texas. It's a great location in a state that should fill up the stadium nicely. But the War Games concept being attached to the show, it is a serious problem. The last couple of years of UFC, they've had half-assed builds to matches that did not require or take full use of the stipulation. Also, last year's Survivor Series was buoyed by being seen as final premium live event. WWE needs to nail both War Games builds if this is going to succeed as a stadium show. And there is no proof that they are capable of achieving as much given the trend of this creative team recently. Beyond that, as we've discussed before, the permanent attachment of War Games to Survivor Series, it is the antithesis of what Paul Levesque outlined when he took over creative. In one of his first interviews, he talked about how WWE ruined the concept of Hell in a Cell by having an annual show where matches were forced into the structure without being legitimate blood feuds. He ended that PLE, and it's been for the better. They've only done 2 Hell in a Cell matches since, one of them that's been executed, another one that's ahead at SummerSlam, and they both have legitimate reasons for happening. That's a huge positive. War Games, though, has now taken the place of Hell in a Cell as a failed annual concept. The only reason it is attached to Survivor Series is because WWE cannot sell that PLE as a stadium show without the attraction of the double cell structure. So I'll reiterate what I said last year. if you are going to force War Games annually onto this show, alternate it between the men and women based on storyline needs. Do not have two of these matches on this year's Survivor Series. It's too much, too repetitive, and frequently too forced as a concept. And I believe, if memory serves me, last year we were disappointed in both War Games, both in terms of the build and the execution. There's only so many things you can do in those structures. There's only so many times that Io Sky donning the trash can on top and doing either a moonsault, or I think last year she did a swanton maybe. There's only so many times you can do that. I love Io. I love that spot. It was old the second time she did it. She did it once in NXT. It was awesome. She did it once on the main roster. It was equally as awesome. I think she's now done it 3 times on the main roster. Like, you can't keep doing the exact same thing. Let her do a different dive with a different weapon off there. Let her hold a chair and do a moonsault. I don't know. My point is, you can't just be throwing out War Games and saying, hey, enjoy it because it's a little bit different and we don't need to put that much effort into it. That's what it felt like last year. Speaking of stadium shows, SummerSlam is now less than 3 weeks away, and ticket sales are terrible. You'll remember how we properly and correctly contextualized the poor WrestleMania 42 ticket sales and explained how they would likely fill out substantially closer to the show. There were a variety of reasons for that, but primarily it worked out because it's WrestleMania and WWE made tickets more reasonable. They were down the exact amount we expected, but it was still more than respectable considering the economy nationally and in Las Vegas, along with repeating a venue for no reason. And WWE, after the show, I forget if it was Nick Khan or Mark Shapiro or whoever, they came out and said, yeah, that was a bad idea, which of course we told them the second they announced it. Now, you are not going to get this same kind of context out of me for SummerSlam. I mean, I will contextualize the situation, but there's no reason for this to be as low as it is. The numbers are shit. WWE has 22,000 out for Saturday, 23,000 plus out for Sunday. The stadium seats 73,000 people. For context, last year, WWE sold 53,000 and 61,000 for the respective nights in a stadium that could seat 83,000. That's MetLife Stadium in New York. So my guess is that WWE's original projections for Minnesota were a similar percent of capacity. About a 10,000 seat drop per night, something like 43,000 and 50,000. Even if you wanted to be more conservative and say it was a 15,000 decline, that would be 38,000 and 45,000. WWE is not even halfway to those numbers with 3 weeks to go, despite having Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins, CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes, and Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar and Hell in a Cell all being set for the show. That is horrendous. Now, are there some extenuating circumstances? Sure. The economy has only gotten worse. Travel and lodging in Minnesota is far more expensive than New York. I know that sounds weird. It's actually true. Minneapolis is the 46th largest city in the United States. New York is the first. So it's not like this worked in New York and it's failing in Los Angeles. It's a totally different location. And while 2 nights in New York is feasible for WWE's number 2 show, even we stated years ago that doing 2 nights in Minnesota, not for a WrestleMania, would be extremely difficult to pull off. Still, despite all of that, these numbers are terrible. Now, I'm sure WWE is going to sell plenty more tickets over the next 3 weeks. I'd be shocked if either night is short of 30,000. But I cannot imagine them getting to those 38 and 43,000 numbers or coming even close to them, given how little time is remaining. And what's particularly difficult to understand is why this has happened beyond the reasons that we just pointed out. Yes, creative is down right now, but those are 3 huge matches. WWE just put 12,000 people in Dallas for a random Raw. They did better than their last time out in the building. They're doing 5-figure attendance gates at TV tapings regularly, but in a wrestling state like Minnesota, they can't do better than double that for a number 2 2-night premium live event, SummerSlam. I mean, again, there's all those contextual issues I provided. There's got to be something else going on. So we're going to keep our eye on these ticket sales numbers over the next couple of weeks. Here's what I believe overall. And it's that WWE was somewhat lulled into a false sense of security having Cena and the retirement tour last year. No one is faulting them for being down year over year. You have Cena one year, you don't have Cena the next. That is a massive factor. But his presence in 2025 held up declining creative with WWE believing that they could probably get away with more than they actually could. Short cards, short builds, all that stuff. There have also been a variety of injuries that completely screwed up creative across multiple shows and divisions. We've covered that. But WWE is simultaneously creating a bunch of unforced errors with its booking, and those situations have now converged into what they are dealing with right now. There is no reason that the originally planned WrestleMania main events are not selling at SummerSlam other than those unforced errors. And there is perhaps no better example of that than the primary topic of our main event, which of course is coming up in a moment, but we actually have more to discuss here. Rhea Ripley made an appearance this weekend at Power Slap, which has to be the lowest rung combat sport in existence outside of the one, and this is just something I saw recently, where two dudes run full speed into each other. And one of them, I guess, wins by standing or standing up first. I don't even know what that is about. For some reason, while on a show no one is watching, Ripley divulged for the first time the specifics of her injury, a partial meniscus tear. Now that's 6 to 12 weeks without surgery. And sometimes you go those 12 weeks and then you say, oh shit, you actually need surgery. She's currently at the 8-week mark. And she said in this interview, she's not comfortable moving laterally and fully bending her knee, which means she's effectively out for SummerSlam. Neither Ripley nor the WWE Championship were mentioned on air Friday on SmackDown. It seems as if WWE is keen to literally do nothing and just hope we forget about its existence until she returns to TV. Now, I understand from WWE's perspective wanting to try and let her heal and see if they could bubble something up closer to the show. The cutoff point should have been the 6-week mark because now the title is vacant without being vacated. The top title on the brand is the United States Championship, which does not even have a notable challenger, and the entire division on SmackDown is just existing in purgatory. They could have used this time to do triple threat qualifiers and come up with a triple threat match for the vacant title at SummerSlam. Ripley could then take her time to recover and go up against that champion whenever she's healthy. She could do what CM Punk did, return on SmackDown, challenge for the title, and win it. And then they just continue with whatever their programming was planned. Instead, the entire division is in limbo, while for the first time in months, the Raw division actually has some direction with the Liv Morgan and Io Sky feud heating up nicely over the last couple of weeks. WWE's booking of the women's division, top to bottom, outside of the tag teams, I suppose, even though that's been weak also, it's been horrific since WrestleMania, and it's 100% their own doing. They refused to find an opponent for Liv due to Stephanie Vaquer's injury, and now they're refusing to move off Rhea due to her own injury. It's ridiculous at this point. And when you know these women are getting injured, which we have seen with Ripley and Morgan, I know we're talking about Vaquer, but we've seen it with Ripley. She can't stay healthy. Okay, that's fine. You can still give her championships, whatever, but you need to always have a plan B ready. If she is the champion and at any point she gets injured, we're going to pivot to this and we're going to do it quick. And then if she comes back and the injury's not as bad as we thought or she recovers quicker, great. Then we flip it back to her. I understand she's the 1A star for the women in WWE right now. That does not mean you just keep the title on her while she's out for 3 months potentially, maybe even longer if this requires surgery on the back end. I don't understand what they are doing. They're killing their whole division to prop up one woman. And that is such a big mistake when you have the strongest women's roster in the entire world. I'm not saying North America anymore, not with all the call-ups from NXT recently. Raw and SmackDown combined have a better women's roster than Stardom. They have a better women's roster, obviously, than AEW and many other companies too. And that's not denigrating those other rosters. There's plenty of talented women there. But the depth of this roster is ridiculous, and WWE is not using it. When is the last time Roxanne Perez was involved in something that actually mattered? She went after the Intercontinental Championship, or she had a number one contendership for one of those titles. She's one of the best wrestlers in the entire company for that division. And she's just the third wheel in Judgment Day, an angle that should have transpired and broken up at WrestleMania with Raquel Rodriguez, we thought, going after Liv. And except that didn't happen at all. Now, maybe Roxy's planned for Money in the Bank, and if so, and it's a face turn, that could be great. Yeah, maybe it's great. But we're wasting all of this time with her. They never pulled the trigger on Raquel. I could go through the list. Fatal Influence, they dropped the ball on them. Hopefully they're about to pick it back up. Jordan Grace, I know she was injured for a bit. They're not using her. Julia, it seemed like they were doing something with her. She missed TV this week. Like, what is happening with this women's division? All right, a couple other quick items. Raw once again outshined SmackDown this week significantly, and the women's booking is part of the reason why. Even with CM Punk on Friday, and even with a reduced 2-hour runtime, the show was tough to get through with some mind-numbing booking decisions, all of which we will get to momentarily. One other note before we get to that, there was an incredible CM Unk UNC sign held up at SmackDown on Friday, which has led some of you to suggest we make an official meaty for fan sign of the year. Now, I believe we gave an honorary to the best fan sign last year. I'm open to making it official. I don't know that it needs to be. I kind of like the unofficial moniker for the award. But the nominees so far would be CM Unk, the Kabuki Warrior sign with Kairi Sane from January. And I believe there was an Io Sky animated sign with her doing the, finger pointing to the head and it being able to move back and forth. But there was another top tier sign we mentioned on this show over the first half of the year that I'm forgetting. So if anyone knows what I'm talking about, send it over to us at Getting Overcast on social. You can DM us. You can just tweet us or post us on Blue Sky, however you want. Make sure we know what sign you're talking about. Or you can also email us, gettingoverpod@gmail.com. I want to be able to keep track of the real nominees, whether we open it for fan voting or whether it's something vintage and I just do as an honorary award. I do think it would be fun to mention again at the end of the year on the 2026 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties. All right, let's get into the week in WWE, and let's start that with a reminder that here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast,
I happen to love the number 5.
hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes, an instant reaction to any television show that creates a major breaking news item that we feel like you need to hear before the next podcast. You'll also get a weekly news and analysis post breaking down any major topics, news, or whatever we can provide to just bring you extra content and ensure that your support is appreciated. So please support us. Make sure we keep the lights on. Join, get extra content as well. buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. All right, let's move into our full breakdown of the week in WWE. And we're going to kick it off, as we always do, by sliding into the main event.
This is the main event.
Nick Aldis opened SmackDown explaining that he has been reinstated as general manager after admitting his fault in the Gunther altercation, despite standing 10 toes down that he deserved it. Then he introduced CM Punk, with both parties confirming it was a long-term kayfabe recruitment of him over to SmackDown. Punk was sporting a shiner and some new merchandise, ironically in Nexus colors. And he referenced the falling out of the sky comment from after WrestleMania. He also said he put his gear on at home before getting in his car, explaining the silly garage door bit. So I'll give them credit where it's due for crossing the T's and dotting the I's. It was still dumb in the moment, and Aldis said he was in the building, which he clearly was not. Punk again promised to be a fighting champion for the fans and live up to his best in the world moniker, daring anyone who had the guts to step up to him. Punk granted Sami Zayn a rematch, saying he understands the frustration he expressed on social media. He also mentioned Gunther and Finn Balor, given their past feuds, along with Royce Keys, Damian Priest, and Trick Williams, before Cody Rhodes obviously interrupted. It was here I realized that Punk had already fought or been around 4 of the 5 people he mentioned, almost like they moved too many people over to SmackDown. This was not an uncommon promo for Punk. We've heard variations of it before, but there's no question it hit home with the audience, who were fully roused behind him at this point. So far, no real issues with the segment, even if it was not the most exciting. Punk does bring an incredibly unique energy and authenticity whenever he is on the screen. So Rhodes found it ironic how their last conversation was literally a mirror of this one, including Punk's black eye. Cody and Punk commiserated over the fact that something has been brewing between them under the surface for years. Punk saying he figured they would wind up fighting for a world championship at WrestleMania, but they probably cannot wait that long, given they're now on the same brand. Rhodes related that he previously told Punk he would defend the title against him whenever he wanted. Punk knew what he was getting at, immediately accepted, and Cody decided that they would fight at SummerSlam. They had a long, tense handshake that it looked like something else was happening before the camera, or when the camera, I should say, panned up. And that was pretty much it. Fans who wanted the match in Oklahoma City, they booed, but that's normal crowd activity. More notable was my reaction, which was, okay, cool. And like, this was quite the departure from the kickoff segment between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, which built and built and built until the crowd was ready for the acceptance and then popped for it. Despite having two wrestlers of similar stature in this spot, it came off to me like a shrug, which should not be my reaction to this booking. Now, there's 3 reasons for it. Number 1, they're both pure baby faces and neither showed even a shred of edge in the segment. 2, if that's going to be the booking, having a let's fight, okay, type of segment, it's not good enough. And 3, it's seriously rushed. There's only 3 more SmackDowns before SummerSlam to that matter in terms of building the match. They have so much history and they didn't get into any of it. This was so damn lazy. Conceptually, this is not that dissimilar to booking Kenny Omega against Will Ospreay for AEW All in terms of 2 babyface friends wanting to test one another. Shockingly, AEW has booked that far better than WWE has booked this because it started their storyline in the background 4 to 6 weeks ago while MJF was still the champion. Now that I think about it, WWE did the same thing with Rollins while Reigns was messing with Jacob Fatu. They built him as the contender in the background. But because Punk has been off TV for 2+ months, there was no opportunity to do anything like that in this feud. They just jumped right into it with both feet. They didn't even test the water. Now, WWE must find a way to inject serious heat into this feud to the point that it will drive ticket sales with 2 more meaningful TV episodes ahead. And I hope I'm proven wrong. I don't see how they can achieve that. It's the right match on the right show if it's not going to be at WrestleMania, but it is not the right build coming off 2 absent months. Also, Cody didn't even bother to mention that he was a deserving number 1 contender because he literally won the opportunity last Friday. They completely glossed over it. He also didn't sell anything from Gunther smashing his head into a car door. No mention by he or Aldis that Cody eventually got cleared after leaving the arena, presumably for an MRI on Monday. Not mentioned. And Sammy did not come out to the ring despite literally being granted a rematch without even asking for one. Those are some major holes, and straight up, when you contextualize all of that, this was a piss-poor, lazily written and delivered segment that left a ton to be desired as an opening for SmackDown. Aldis backstage was on the phone with Zayn, who was apparently granted a mental health break, which explained his absence from SmackDown after the fact. Sammy was arguing over the match being made for SummerSlam without his involvement. Gunther stormed into the office, which had a bunch of random musical instruments on the wall, saying it's their first day back, and they both made mistakes, so he is not going to get upset right away. He wants to give Nick a chance to fix his booking because Gunther deserves to be in the ring with the WWE champion, whomever that may be. Gunther gave him until the end of the show to make it right, and Aldis said he would consider it. They closed the Sammy plot hole that I previously mentioned, and that was nice. But while I cannot speak for everyone, I bet many viewers were more excited to hear what he had to say on SmackDown than Punk. I know WWE needed to build SummerSlam with a short window, but they could have done something like have Zayn in Aldis' office waiting for him during that segment. That way he was separated from them, yet we could still see him freak out and then maybe have his mental health break live on the show, as opposed to just in the aftermath of Raw on Monday night. And they did show the video for that. We'll talk about it in a moment. Instead, the guy who was the top headline in WWE over the last 2 weeks was not even on TV the following show after losing the title following a 9-day reign. That's malpractice as far as I'm concerned. And then with Gunther, I enjoyed the interaction with Aldis, but how does the general manager not say peep to him about attacking Rhodes and ruining a championship match? How was there no continued ire and immediate punishment? How did he not say, Gunther, we worked that into your suspension, or we understand why you acted out? Why aren't you at least addressing the fact that he forced the champion, the number 1 contender in Cody, to bleed from his ear 4 days earlier on television?
So dumb.
SmackDown aired Zayn's profane rant after his championship defeat on Raw that I just mentioned, but it left off the part where he cried, which was the mental health breakdown of it all that he's getting the day off for. That might have been the best part of it, too. And this should have aired before the Aldis segment announcing the break, not after. Order of operations is something we all learned back in middle school, maybe even lower school, and they're getting it wrong on a professional television program. Punk was asked about Sami and Gunther, but he said he's dealt with far worse than both. Candice LeRae and comatose Johnny Gargano interrupted, saying Sami may have been annoying, but he never gave up on them. He represented real hope for real underdogs and was the actual voice of the voiceless for Gargano, who doesn't speak. Punk spoke to Gargano, wondering what happened to Johnny Wrestling, and he told LeRae she's great and needs to get back into the ring because what they are doing right now is not working. Finn Balor then welcomed Punk to SmackDown with a smirk. We'll talk about Balor later in the show. This was the third time in the first hour plus of SmackDown that a variety of people you would not expect to interact did so. And the show felt so much fresher because of it. Punk telling Gargano and LeRae to wake up and remember who they were supposed to be.
Thank you!
Balor getting back in Punk's grill with some momentum behind him based on what happened on Friday.
Thank you!
There was enough here to raise an eyebrow and pique one's interest for sure. You can argue it was the most successful segment involving Punk and the championship on the entire show, which is rough considering it was a huge focus all episode. Gunther called out Aldis in the main event segment. Nick decided, despite their differences, he would give Gunther exactly what he wants, Cody and Punk, in Madison Square Garden in a tag team match. And Zayn was going to be his partner. Gunther was not amused, but Aldis was undeterred, saying he never should have signed him to SmackDown. He's been a pain in the ass ever since, and he regrets it. Gunther snapped, attacking Aldis with hammer elbows and a lariat before knocking him out in the sleeper hold, locking it back in a second, third, and fourth time with additional hammer elbows in between. Rhodes must have been taking a dump or something because he was unable to save until seconds before the show ended. It seems like that was supposed to happen off air for the house. It got caught on TV. I saw people saying, oh, WWE went long. I actually think they went short. And that was the problem. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000, okay, maybe more like a dozen times, but the sleeper hold is killing Gunther. In this case, even though Aldis is in great shape, he's not an active competitor, so I understand it a little bit more, but it is so much less impactful seeing him lock the move in 4 times than, I don't know, being Gunther and hitting lariats, chops, power bombs, tear open the dude's dress shirt and lay that shit in. You're a monster, bro. You only get over people by hugging them right now, really tight around their head. This would have worked in the 80s. It's 2026. We need Gunther to go back to being legitimately dominant physically. Aside from my disagreement, I guess, in the form of attack, it was a solid segment. Classic Saturday night's main event booking, creating a rare can they coexist match that, credit where it's due, WWE has largely stopped booking under Paul Levesque. Extremely rare to get a match like that these days in WWE. The key is going to be the creative on the go-home SmackDown because some contentiousness needs to be created between the baby faces for this to work and for their SummerSlam storyline to progress through this match. Also, I need to see Sami on Friday with a mic in his hand before the match on Saturday. I don't want the first time we see him after he loses the title to be at Saturday night's main event. But I do like the match booking overall. So while I was disappointed with large swaths of this overarching story on Friday, I will give WWE credit for moving it across 4 segments, developing it as the show extended, and ultimately getting to the point of intensity for Gunther and Aldis. I'm not sure a career match is even necessary for them at SummerSlam, but if they do a street fight or something, it could hit well. As far as Gunther goes, look, there is a legitimate argument to be made that he has not been booked well since the AJ Styles retirement. But don't forget, his WrestleMania plans got thwarted due to a full recalibration of the main events all the way down the card. And with WWE moving its planned WrestleMania World title matches to SummerSlam, there was not an opportunity for him to become champion between those 2 major shows. It does feel more and more to me like Gunther might be Sami's opponent at WrestleMania, the champion he needs to overcome. He gets his win back over Punk later this year, takes the title all the way until April. While we were angry with Zayn bumping Chad Gable a couple years ago at WrestleMania, Gunther and Sami were great opponents, and it would make sense to run that back if Sami has a choice to challenge, whether he wins Or I guess he would need to win Royal Rumble in order to do that. But that's a long way away. And no matter what, Gunther needs a world title reign at some point soon to capitalize on all of the retirements. Otherwise, we get a year out from that, the career killer moniker is done, and you kind of just forget about all of it. And it's for nothing at the end of the day. Moving on to the second half of our main event. Michael Cole on commentary announced that there would be a multi-part, multi-week series on the Roman Reigns-Seth Rollins extended storyline. And I thought, you know what, that's a pretty cool idea for a lot of fans who may not have been around during the Shield heyday. It started with Chapter 1, The Shield, which I shit you not, lasted 40 seconds. 40. Some quick highlights flashed, old voiceovers were used, and that was it. Chapter 2 was on the Shield breakup. It was somehow shorter and lesser. If you were not watching WWE at the time, these did not teach you anything. I've seen TV episode refreshers that were more detailed than these. Now, if these were teasers, let's say, with QR codes at the end to promote extended YouTube videos or a series that dove deep into their story, that would have been totally fine. But these were literally nothing other than a reminder that, oh, hey, by the way, these guys have been feuding for a while, and here's some highlights of them working together and apart from each other. It was a total waste of limited TV time. They were pathetic, but worse than being pathetic, they were utterly useless. They did not accomplish anything. They had zero value. And by the way, for those wondering, Dean Ambrose was shown on them. It was quick flashes every time. I saw people writing, oh, the Fed did whatever it could to avoid showing Ambrose. No, they didn't show anybody. They didn't show Rollins or Reigns. There was no one on screen for more than a second at any given time. So he was not hidden. He was also not featured equally. He's not in the feud. So I don't know what everyone expects in terms of Ambrose involvement in packages leading into Reigns and Rollins. But this was absolutely pathetic on Monday night. And I don't know what WWE has planned going forward, but they went through the two longest stretches of their feud and their history in 90 seconds. Less than that, probably. So what are we doing here? What is going on?
What is going on?
Reigns and Rollins unsurprisingly met in the main event of Raw for a contract signing. Say what you will about online sentiment, the fans in the arena were rabid for both of these guys. Loud dueling chants. Rollins signed first, saying beating Reigns was as certain as death or taxes. Roman said Seth bored the fans last week, but he was listening. He claimed Rollins was only number one at being a hater because they've never been on the same level. Reigns then signed, saying he will put a stake in the ground and prove how different they are, show what a real number one looks like at SummerSlam. Rollins left with a diss. I'll see you the next time you decide to show up for work. But Reigns called him back, with Rollins halfway down the ramp, wondering what would happen if Seth somehow beats him.
You just gonna sign and run? All right, how about we play your game? What if you do win? What if you do beat me at SummerSlam? What's gonna happen? You're gonna carry it for a couple months and get hurt again?
Roman suggested all of it is self-sabotage because he cannot handle the weight and pressure of being the top guy. Rollins stormed back, daring Reigns to say what he wants without holding back. Roman said he knows Seth is number two because after all these years, he still needed to win Money in the Bank and fake an injury to become champion. Reigns further said Rollins could not even achieve the number one spot with his work daddy, Triple H, running WWE, giving him every bit of push and promotion possible. Then he said that they will always have those respective number one and number two roles, and it was time for Rollins to acknowledge it. Bitch. I figured that would be the end. Perfect exclamation point to the segment. Advance it to next week. Give Rollins the opportunity to, come up with what he was going to say.
No.
Rollins seethed and went off on Reigns, Be Rabbit 8 Mile final battle style, repeating everything Roman had said about Seth over the years about being better, bigger, richer than him. Rollins said they are not running the same race, and he's not only proud of what he's fought to become over the years, he's so glad that he's not Reigns. Seth feigned as if he was going to leave, but instead he connected with a haymaker, taking out his frustrations on Roman with a series of blows, asking why the bloodline wasn't saving him, and simultaneously saying that he knows who he is. He doesn't need Roman to tell him. Rollins looked to leave, but turned back for a stomp. Reigns caught him with a Superman punch. He went for a Shield powerbomb through the table, but Rollins countered into a pedigree and hit the stomp to end it.
Yes! I love that!
Rollins, interestingly and frustratingly, got more of a heel reaction than Reigns, who is clearly the bad guy in this feud and the overall heel in WWE. Not to mention, even if you just looked at this from face value and you said, hey, these are two guys who are equals and they're talking to each other, Reigns said negative shit to Rollins, and all Rollins really said was, I believe in myself. So why are you booing the other guy? The truth is, the fans just love this tribal chief gimmick so much that they refuse to see through it, and it's super unfortunate. Still, this was an excellent segment with some cutting lines from Reigns, who needed to share his perspective more than Rollins, considering we've heard from Seth regularly on this topic. It was not even just what Roman said, that all of Rollins' success was thanks to him, but how he said it, hitting all of Seth's insecurities as a character, one after another. He only became relevant because of Triple H. He only truly thrives as the top guy when Roman is not around. He gets injured whenever he has a huge opportunity, etc. Rollins responded to that well by showing how it all affected him, and swinging first was meant to be out of character, considering he twice tried to walk away before that happened. It's not that dissimilar from what they did with CM Punk. Reigns found that line and he crossed it on purpose to get a reaction out of the guy. I don't understand why people have a problem with that. Rollins certainly could have shot back. Hey, Reigns, don't you remember? You were in the same spot as me. You were the big dog because Vince McMahon was your daddy, the same way you say Paul Levesque is mine. I wonder why he did not, because veiled references to that have been made before. Perhaps it's being saved for next week. The idea here is that Rollins was seeing red once Reigns was done speaking, so he didn't want to verbally answer back. He just wanted to go after him. Maybe they held it because it was mentioned during the WrestleMania build with Punk and previously in the three-way build going into WrestleMania 2 years ago. I'm not sure. I can't say definitively, but I can't imagine that it was seen by viewers, and maybe I'm wrong, you all can tell me, as like, oh, I can't believe he didn't say that. The segment was terrible because of it. That's not how I saw it at all. As I said last week, the truncated timetable is what's most frustrating here. If this is going to be their last ever meeting for a championship, and maybe it's not, they just wanted to make sure they get this one in because who knows what the future holds. If it's going to be their last meeting, it really did deserve like a full 2 to 3 month build to get us there. There's still 2 more Raws to go. That is theoretically enough time to heat this up even further and get us to the point where this is a cannot miss match. But frankly, as soon as they announced it, I already felt it was a cannot miss match. So I think it was successful. It was certainly much more successful as the main event of Raw than the opening segment on SmackDown with Punk and Rhodes. There's no question. This is the night 2 main event and the other is the night 1 main event. I mean, I couldn't even imagine them flipping them. But could it have been better? Like, is there a little bit more meat that was left on the bone here that they could have attacked and still had enough, in the coffers to do 2 more weeks of build? I think so. But, being an 8.5 out of 10 is certainly not a bad thing. And that's probably the way I would grade this segment. 2 other super quick notes. We got a new sound drop out of the segment. I did not play it, but you will hear it on a future episode of the show. And if you looked at Roman's shirt, it was an OTC shirt. It did not say only tribal chief or original tribal chief, which is what Silver King wanted back in the day. Now it says one true champion. So if you have to kayfabe that, all right, I just want everyone to think this through with me. He's the one true champion, but he's holding the World Heavyweight Championship that he previously dissed. Now he recanted that, to be fair, but he still dissed it previously. And the title he did hold, the WWE Championship, which he made undisputed because he merged it with the Universal. If you were going to say there was one true champion, it would be the person holding that title, not the person holding this title. I digress. Plenty more show ahead, and we are going to get to all of it after I remind you that whether it is Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, premium live events on Netflix, or even Saturday night's main event on YouTube, getting over is all in these days with NordVPN. It's easy to set up. It's a drastically better viewing experience each night with the same high-quality streams, except they become commercial-free shows. All you have to do is sign up at nordvpn.com/gettingover, open the app, quick connect to another country like the United Kingdom or France, open Netflix, and watch the program of your choice. Again, for Saturday night's main event, you can watch it on YouTube. But that's not all you get with a NordVPN subscription, because it is an all-in-one digital security solution that blocks threats before they reach your device, not after. You get protected against malware, dangerous websites, and ads, and one account can be used on 10 different devices. Best of all, there is no risk, nor does a 30-day money-back guarantee. To get the best discount, go to nordvpn.com/gettingover. Our link will give you 4 extra free months off the 2-year plan. So improve your WWE viewing, save money, and receive an all-in-one security solution while getting the best discount for the best VPN at nordvpn.com/gettingover. All right, let's break down everything else that happened this week in the world of WWE and offer some grades, which we will do in the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Hey, yo. Survey says one more for the good guy.
Say hello to the back.
Don't sing it. Bring it.
We had Finn Balor against Tama Tonga, and this was just wrapping up something we mentioned in the main event. Tama is still wearing the face paint despite MFT being done. As long as Tala does not do it for matches as well, that's totally fine. Tama did it in New Japan as well. Balor got chants during the break. The crowd stayed hot for him, which was nice to see coming off of a lot of inactivity. Tama hit a nice spinning back suplex before Balor rallied with his signature sequence. Tala jumped on the apron to delay coup de grace, which Tama avoided, coming back with cutthroat to the back of the head and a double underhook spinning driver for a false finish. The crowd was all in with Finn at this point. He toped both Tongans and hit coup de grace, getting the win. Tala was supposed to catch Tama on a prior spot out of the ring, completely missed him, and that was a bad look. But don't look now. This match, the way it was booked, it was the definition of an establishment win for a babyface that a company wants to push. How often would we see this exact match finish with the Tala distraction and Tama offensive combination beating Finn? 8 times out of 10? Balor not only got the win, he overcame adversity, kicked out of a double finisher, and earned the victory while simultaneously rousing the crowd. Even if I'm wrong, and this did not have any deeper meaning, the way the fans reacted to Balor in a basic mid-card match should be an eye-opener for the creative team. The match was strong but unspectacular. Thought they'd do a little bit more just given the talent and familiarity they have with one another, but Tama looked legitimate going against Finn, and Balor winning like that was obviously good. Brock Lesnar opened Raw alongside Paul Heyman with 5 presumed Dallas police officers at the base of the ramp as fans barked and chanted for Oba Femi. Heyman said Femi is clearly a huge dummy who is stalker-level obsessed with Lesnar, considering how he turned down a world championship opportunity to fight him. In turn, he said Brock is now obsessed with Oba, so Heyman wanted a no-touch clause, but since that move's too slow, he pulled strings and got a restraining order, seemingly one that worked both ways. It was a little confusing what Heyman was saying here. Oba entered back wearing a dumb wrestling shirt, but better than the terrible one. As the cops attempted to arrest him for violating the order, he tossed one dude clear out of the ring like he was a bag of rice and then chucked another dude into the other 4 officers. Femi chided Lesnar for going from being a beast to a coward and said he only deferred his championship opportunity because Brock would have cost him the title anyway. Oba's closing was the best part of this segment by far.
SummerSlam, Hell in a Cell, Oba Femi, Brock Lesnar, no more games, no more BS, no more low blows, no more running. You can't run from the ruler. You can't run from the destroyer. You can't run from the bringer of war. You can't run from Oba Femi. I like it. I like it a lot.
Later in the show, when Femi approached Adam Pearce backstage, the general manager confirmed that the restraining order and officers, all of that was phony. Oba said it's clear Brock and Paul are afraid, and if what he did to Lesnar at WrestleMania was bad, it would be even worse inside Hell in a Cell. So first of all, can we talk about, were they impersonating officers? That's illegal. Were officers there under false pretenses of a restraining order? That's illegal. Did Heyman bribe them? How else would they have shown up if there wasn't a restraining order that needed to be followed? That's a huge plot hole. I know that we're picking nits about a wrestling product, and I get it, but we do really care for logic and consistency on the show, and that to me just did not play. Also, let's not forget, didn't Heyman do the restraining order thing with Seth Rollins previously, like in Boston or something like that? And that was also proven to either be fake or a one state only deal, whatever the case might have been. So they went back to the well here, and I didn't really appreciate that. It felt like that closing I just played from Femi, though, should have been what led to a Hell in a Cell announcement, rather than it being thrown out 2 weeks earlier in the feud. But with so little time to build to SummerSlam and WWE needing big matches announced for the card at that juncture, it's understandable why they did it 2 weeks ago. I still believe they could have announced the match then and given the stipulation now. I think it would have been a little bit better and more logical. Heyman running the segment was unsurprisingly much better than Lesnar, but in the lead up to Hell in a Cell, I want to see these guys tearing each other apart, and there's only so many ways to do the same talking segment. It didn't feel like there was much creativity here. We've seen the same thing with far less intimidating guys, and at the end, it wasn't even a real restraining order. Plus, while Femi got his big moment at the end, that promo line was awesome, which is why we played it. It didn't really advance this in any meaningful way. Now, it still gets a good because it was executed well and Oba's awesome, but it's disappointing that something rolling so well has lacked the last couple of weeks when, to this point, they've been pretty nails with the booking for this feud. R-Truth backstage was paying off a World Cup bet to Fraxium, who presumably took Belgium as Europeans. This is all they're doing. Random backstage segments again. War Raiders interrupted, sick of having fun, wanting Truth to go to Aldis and get the agreed upon championship match made. Jimmy Uso and Jacob Fatu interrupted, asking about Solo Sikoa. Truth said his kids yeeted on themselves, so he was stuck babysitting. We discussed this last week. Perhaps that was reality, family illness or something, but the absence has been completely unexplained after the hot angle with LA Knight. Fatu then asked about Royce Keys, who Truth said he's never seen the day before in his life, but you got to protect your neck around him. Damian Priest then came through saying otherwise, confirming Keys was in attendance. Priest reminded Truth that Keys is not their problem or business. The Bloodline then hit the ring. When Uso called out Solo, Royce appeared instead, coming down to a remixed entrance theme that got rid of the harmonica, and I think it sounded improved overall, even though we only got a taste of it. Keys had a problem with his name being in their mouths, both guys doing the bidding of an absent Reigns, and Bloodline business impacting everyone in WWE, including now him. Fatu tried to calm tensions, saying they are close enough where Keys can talk shit about anyone he wants except Reigns. Royce said their family is fighting each other, while he doesn't even have family to fight because he's lost all of them, only for Jacob to become his brother out of loyalty and friendship and now be at odds with him. Jimmy got heated, thinking Jacob had his back for a potential fight or match, but Fatu dropped him like a bad habit. Jimmy wanted to make a match and tried to get one over on Royce, but Keys stood tall. We'll get to the match in a moment. I went from indifferent to seriously interested with the quickness here, both in the backstage segment and again with them in the ring. The mixing of talent backstage was most interesting. Once they went face to face, the story they told juxtaposing how Keys came up with the Anawahi clan, it was kind of brilliant. It did get corny for about 15 seconds when they got into a dumb bit about crossing a line. But other than that brief step back, the crowd was behind Keys in what I believe was his first in-ring promo since debuting. He didn't get many of them in AEW either. And his microphone positioning over the first half was far too low away from his mouth. You could barely hear the power in his voice. He brought it up over the second half and sounded much, much better. This was so much better than I expected from start to finish, and therefore it does get a good. So Keys fought Uso. They had no problems during the break, but Keys delivered a really strange power slam immediately coming back. He did 2 world's strongest slams into the announce table lid. I have said this before, reducing the fall distance on moves like that into a table or ring apron, it makes them appear less impactful, even when they're supposed to be more impactful. With a shit-eating grin on his face, Solo appeared in the timekeeper's area behind Jimmy as he tried to take a break, tapping him on the shoulder, but Jacob ran down to confront him before he could land a Samoan spike. They brawled ringside, with Sikoa briefly taking the Tongan death grip. Keys got distracted, allowing Uso to hit him with a blindside spear and get the win. Keys then pulled Fatu off Sikoa, who was getting beaten in the corner. Fans chanted for Jacob, the heel, who dropped Royce and stopped himself from murking Solo with a hip attack while he had a chair wrapped around his neck. Jacob yelled at Sikoa to reconsider his stance, or next time he won't stop himself. Solo had a hysterical face on in this moment. This is a tough grade. The match itself was fine. The finish was absolutely horrendous. I was flabbergasted and legitimately angry. And I try not to get angry at like the booking of match finishes unless it's a dumb roll-up or something. Why the hell are you having Royce not only lose to Jimmy of all people, but lose to him after a single horrible spear, which he only uses sparingly. And I don't believe he's ever won a match with it before. Why are both Usos using the spear? Because Roman Reigns does, and they fought him and they had to use it against him one time, and now it's part of their arsenal. These guys are veteran wrestlers for decades. Why can't they come up with moves of their own? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. But you're having Jimmy beat a guy 60 pounds of muscle heavier than him an hour after Punk called out Keys as a potential WWE Championship contender. Jimmy shouldn't be beating Otis with a spear, let alone Royce. It was pure absurdity. If Fatu had attacked him ringside first, weakening Keys significantly, running his ribs into the barricade and the steel steps and something like that, and then he went with a spear, okay, maybe I could buy it. This was an absolute joke, especially when he still got beaten down by Fatu after the match anyway. This is not nitpicking a match decision. This is dumb fuck stuff. It's mind-numbingly dumb. And then on the other side, WWE is back to allowing Sikoa to clown around, which shows so much personality, and he is proving again that he's incredible either as a face or a comedy heel. So that was a huge positive. I understand the reason that they needed to create an opening for Royce to presumably side with Solo and LA. He could have won the match if he were still going to beat him down afterward and have his friend turn on him. That's enough reason in its own right. The post-match with Fatu and Sikoa, that was strong. And if the finish was different, it would have ensured this got a positive grade. But I gotta go bad here. Keys losing like that was pure absurdity. It was unforgivable booking. And the positivity around Sikoa, it could not overcome that on its own. So then we move over to Raw. And we have Keys against Uso Part 2. Now, I started Raw late, so I did not get the commercial break segments on my broadcast. Jimmy was apparently out on stage cutting a promo for some reason, so Royce attacked him from behind, and Pierce made the match, which started during the break. WWE, to their credit, did show all of this to the American audience after the commercial, but it was still odd to come back from a break into the middle of an unadvertised match. Keys took something of a Samoan drop over the announce table as Fatu drove into the venue and then stormed into the arena. He forced a disqualification after Royce hit what Cole called Sky High, a seated spinebuster. Jacob was beside himself, brokenhearted, as he attacked his friend and wrapped a steel chair around his neck, just like he did to Solo on SmackDown. Sikoa ran out of the crowd with a mic, begging Fatu to stop, saying he's been stupid this entire time, not remembering blood is thicker than water. Solo decided he was ready to come home and join the family. He went into the middle of the ring and threw up the one. Jimmy and Jacob stood right next to him doing the same, but Solo smiled, stuck out his tongue, and then leveled Uso with a Samoan spike. That gave Royce a chance to respawn, only to eat a super kick from Jimmy as Solo took the Tongan death grip fully. LA Knight ultimately saved with a steel chair. Fatu no-sold a shot to the back, but Knight landed a couple more and finally sent him out of the ring. Then LA grabbed the mic, saying he's sick of the bloodline shit, but he's finally realized he does not have to do this alone, so he challenged to a trios match at SummerSlam so they can put the bloodline in the rear view mirror. He also had a killer new nickname for Jay, calling him the Unfortunate Event, which is just an absolute dagger.
This is such good shit.
Again, though, an extremely tough grade. So WWE runs a rematch, and here I am on my couch assuming, like an idiot, I guess, that WWE was doing it to correct the massive booking error from SmackDown of letting Jimmy win and having Royce lose so pathetically. Keys would get his win back emphatically, he'd look strong, and then they could move forward and do the booking just like they did over the remainder of the segment.
No.
For some dumb shit reason, Royce was not allowed to beat Jimmy clean, which absolutely could have happened before the drive-by attack from Jacob. And then everything else could have finished the exact same way. The other frustrating part about the booking is that we literally just got a 6-man involving the Usos and Knight at WrestleMania. And here we are exactly 3 months later, and there's going to be another 6-man at SummerSlam with 50% of the same parts. Now, to be fair, there's a much better and deeper storyline here, but it does feel, and I believe I said this last week, that Drew McIntyre is missing from the equation. It also feels like this is just a preamble until War Games, which is 4 months after SummerSlam. Now, that's a pessimistic presumption, so I'm not including that in my grading here, but it's tough not to believe that coming out of this segment. For Sikoa's altered expression and Knight's promo and the cool production of Jacob's interference, I will ultimately give this a light good, but there was still so much unnecessarily wrong with it that I continue to wonder whether anyone in WWE creative is working in quality control or bothers to read a second draft of some of these creative plans, because the concepts inherently are not bad, but the elements are often mind-numbing. This should have been a rematch set up the way they set it up, as odd as it was. Royce beating Jimmy in 8 to 10 minutes, and immediately after the bell, or as the finish is happening, you see Jacob drive into the arena, Jimmy loses, he attacks Royce, and you move forward. I don't understand why that would have been so difficult, or why WWE doesn't believe Keys needed that win, because he absolutely did coming out of SmackDown. Here's my other question. If the bloodline was crazy compelling right now, if it was the clear top storyline everyone cared about like it was 3 years ago, if it was the build for a 10-man match at Survivor Series where you need a variety of bodies for multiple shows, I could understand why this would have been transversing Raw and SmackDown. But they've been booking them across both brands for like 2 months now for a 6-man tag team match. Really? That's why we've been doing all of this? Come on. Io Sky fought Roxanne Perez on Raw. Io dominated from the onset until Judgment Day distracted, turning the tables with Roxy focusing on the knee, which is now becoming a long-term injury cell for Io. Sky blocked a moonsault with double knees and hit a butterfly backbreaker, selling on the execution. Io hit a missile dropkick, but Roxy avoided bullet train attack, the knee drilling the middle turnbuckle before Perez locked it into a submission that Cole incorrectly referred to as a single leg crab. A double distraction prevented a limping over the moonsault attempt, but Io was ultimately able to reverse a victory roll to score the win, with the crowd going absolutely wild for her. Sol Ruca saved a 3-on-1 attack after the heels took out Sky's knee, but Raquel Rodriguez expertly caught her flying off the apron, swung her into the barricade with gusto, and then powerbombed her into the ring post and dropped her like a sack of potatoes. The ring post bump sounded like a shotgun blast.
How do you like that, huh?
I liked it a lot, Bailey. I thought it was pretty sick. Io then ate Oblivion from Liv Morgan and got straight drilled with the World Championship to the point that I think she legitimately got a bump on her head. In between, Io tried to kick Liv, so Morgan just pimp slapped her straight across the face.
What is the 5 fingers say to the face? What? Slap!
Oh, I also forgot to mention, Liv somehow one-upped her normal look, not only wearing the tiny white shirt and the short black shorts, but keeping the button to the shorts open with nude-colored underwear and her hip bones sticking out. So for that,
Gonna look good, but she's got me saying, hey now!
And now we have like a mini gauntlet match to hold with Vintage on Thursday, because that's the second legitimate contender recently, and I didn't even talk about Kathy Kelly on Friday, who deserves one of her own.
Gonna look good, but she's got me saying, hey now!
So we're going to have a 4-person gauntlet match coming up Thursday for the Hey Now Championship, which is currently, and ironically, held by Roxy. Anyway, back to the segment. This was great. Not good, great heel work. And it was booked perfectly. Io overcame a massive 3-on-1 disadvantage on her own with a clean win, sold her knee incredibly well. It's obviously going to be an excuse for SummerSlam. And while it does seem like they're hammering us over the head with it, the whole reason they are doing it is because they want Sky to stay as strong as possible on the other side. If they value her that much, which is what we've always wanted, I'm going to allow it, because they're hitting us over the head with this injury like she's Cody Rhodes or John Cena. At the same time, given all the adversity she is facing, the ideal booking would be for her to win the title. I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. Not only was this a fun, competitive match between two of the best wrestlers on the roster, the post-match was tremendous. It was Raquel and Liv at their respective best, and a reminder that Morgan is a top-tier heel when given the opportunity to flex those muscles. I said it was great earlier, but that's not a grade for this segment. The grade for the segment, of course, is good. Jade Cargill fought Alexa Bliss. Cargill and the baddies talked shit about Charlotte Flair backstage, saying they are not responsible for what happens to Bliss. Jade completely dismissed Alexa to focus on Charlotte, so Bliss took out her knee, which did not matter at all after it happened. They didn't work the knee or do anything despite the massive size disadvantage. Bliss hit a basement blockbuster, made a nice sequence where Jade caught Alexa flying, only for Bliss to try and counter into Sister Abigail with another attempted jaded counter. Flair hung Cargill on the ropes, giving Bliss an opportunity for a fold-over cover, but B-Fab distracted her on the apron, and Jaded ultimately ended the match. Charlotte saved a post-match attack, only to lose the numbers game and get held down in the corner as Jade wrapped a steel chair around Alexa's arm and bent it all the way back, slamming it on the canvas. Bliss sold this by crying in pain later backstage. You'll remember from the Ronda Rousey feud that Bliss is double jointed. She bent her elbow safely to sell Rousey's armbar as dislocating it. That was the goal here, to go back to doing that. But using a chair to do it, it completely complicated the visual. She was not able to dislocate it as well, and commentary did not do a good enough job selling until it was over. Still, I enjoyed the write-off of Alexa to give more momentum toward Charlotte and Jade. But there was also a logic gap, because why weren't Tiffany Stratton and Chelsea Green ready to help them when they've been involved in all of this recently? Beyond that, while the match went 7 minutes, those of you without Netflix only saw 3 minutes and 30 seconds of action. That's an automatic bad in my book, especially coming off last week's 3-minute women's match, with this being the only storyline for the women they had on the episode. It was borderline otherwise, and credit to Bliss for selling the injury with some types of bruises and stuff at home over the weekend. But yeah, I can't give this a positive grade when we're barely getting women's content on SmackDown, despite the division being absolutely stacked, and we're going to talk about that later in this segment. We had an Intercontinental Championship #1 contender gauntlet match on Raw. Dominic Mysterio and Joe Hendry started with the former murking the ladder into the steps. Hendry countered a tornado DDT perfectly before hitting a fallaway slam, but JD McDonough distracted and Mysterio won with an Enziguri 619 and Frog Splash. I love gauntlet matches, okay? I hate when WWE runs gauntlet matches with like 4-minute segments involving legitimate talent. It is, for me, so pathetic.
We're wrestlers in a wrestling ring. Let's just freaking wrestle.
Javon Evans was next, hitting red dot after the break. He tagged JD when he distracted again, but after eating a 619, Danhausen effectively saved by driving onto the stage and cursing Dom from afar. The wrong ring post sparked, so Danhausen said shit. Dom then jumped off the top rope into absolutely nothing, and the camera half missed Javon hitting the OG cutter, as it showed instead Danhausen threatening to shoot McDonough with a t-shirt gun. This was an absolute mess. I don't know if the wrong ring post sparked on purpose or if it was accidental, and that's why Dom just jumped off into nothing, but it was a really rough start to this gauntlet. Luckily, the match completely turned a corner after that bullshit. When Dragon Lee entered fourth, Evans delivered one of the most insane hip tosses I've ever seen, with Lee flying over and into the timekeeper's barrier, hitting the barricade. Javon then ran around the ring to splash Dragon in that area, flinging himself so far that he basically went over the second barricade and into the crowd. Dragon hit a Hurricanrana over the ropes off the apron ringside before needing to do a double take on a step-off tornado DDT using the middle rope for a false finish. He followed with a huge hanging double stomp, but as he was attempting Styles Clash, Javon slid out and caught him in a double leg trap cover for the 1-2-3. I'd have liked to see Dragon win that, just considering his body of work lately, and especially given what happened next. Rusev entered fifth, but he surprised, attacked Evans from behind. Javon recovered after the break with a tope con hero and red dot, but Rusev responded with a swinging Uranagi into the Accolade. Evans fought out of it, grabbed the bottom rope. Rusev pulled him back, and everyone appropriately thought that was the finish, except Javon somehow powered out of a second Accolade with a backpack slam and had one last gasp with an OG cutter attempt. Rusev thwarted it with a punch to the head before staving off one final wind to advance in the gauntlet via knockout with the Accolade. Chad Gable was sixth. Rusev caught him flying with a Uranagi and largely maintained control offensively, overpowering Gable regularly. Rusev tried to rake the eyes to prevent an Accolade escape, but Gable did nonetheless, German suplexing him into the turnbuckles and then climbing the top rope for a fall-down victory roll to advance, a waterfall victory roll, if you will. Rusev responded by locking in the Accolade until Ethan Page entered last, the heavy advantage gifted by his friend. Page landed a pull-up power slam while trash-talking along with a confidence breaker, snuffing out any momentum that Trad tried to muster in that moment. Gable countered Egoplex with an angle slam, then countered an avalanche power slam attempt into an ankle lock, which he rolled through into another ankle lock for a submission victory to become the #1 contender. This wound up as a faulty yet great gauntlet match. The progression confused me. The entire point of the gauntlet, I thought, was to build Gable and prove him as a deserving challenger by going through some of the top names on Raw in succession, to rally the fans behind him as he faced adversity yet overcame it time and again. He didn't need to go the distance per se, but he probably should have entered in the middle of the match, fighting Javon before going through the heels. Instead, Gable got the penultimate spot with the second shortest road of anyone involved. It seems like WWE chose instead to simultaneously build Javon in the match. And trust me, Silver King is not complaining about both guys getting over here, which they did. I'll even accept an argument that it was the better booking, pushing two babyfaces in one match instead of one. But considering the short window before SummerSlam, how Javon got over more than Chad in the match, and the fact that Gable already beat Rusev on TV, so he only defeated one new person in this match, I believe it was the wrong move to book it this way. I'm still extremely happy Gable won. The middle third of the match turned something that was rather frustrating at the start into an extremely valuable part of Raw. And at 38 plus minutes with 7 competitors, it averaged around 6+ minutes per segment, which, as I've said before, when we talk gauntlet matches, it is not long enough. It's okay to have one shorty at 5 or 6 minutes, but the rest should be no shorter than 8 to 10, and only one in this whole sequence went above 7. If it was me, I pull Hendry out, I do 6 guys and the same 38 minutes, and I think we look at it differently. Of course, beggars can't be choosers. Gable is getting a singles match for the Intercontinental Championship he should have won 2 years ago at SummerSlam in his hometown against a top-tier wrestler in Penta, against whom he lost when Penta debuted in WWE. So it's a full circle with a story to get us there. Not perfect, still the right move, hopefully the right result, and they need to get 18 to 20 minutes. If they do,
That's gonna be a banger!
4 stars, A- for this match. Good. Trick Williams fought Carmelo Hayes in a non-title match. Hayes backstage said no one needs to talk about him proving or deserving anything because he's already stated his case. He took a shot at Lil Yachty, saying it's no surprise that he's a great sidekick considering all his best work has come on features.
That was a good one, yeah.
And he said, while Trick may have the aura, he's not him. Great, super confident promo from Mello. Later backstage, Williams was angry, unable to find his United States Championship, but Boat came through saying he did something behind his back. He made a legacy title like John Cena's spinner. It was the same general design, but with a white fur strap, which was genius. But the biggest improvement was blue being added to the stars on top. It looked amazing, but it's basically the women's version with fur. So how do they differentiate the strap? The heavy-handed branding of legacy title, a term I've never heard used in kayfabe before. It was such an eye roll, but it's the right design for the right guy. The fans are going to buy the hell out of this strap. This wound up being the main event with Ricky Saints watching backstage. Trick tried to do the British Bulldog delayed vertical suplex during the break, but Mello rolled him down into a small package and hit a blind springboard DDT. He also hit La Mystica after the break, but Trick came back with a bookend. Hayes answered with a leaping DDT, so Williams hit a jumping neckbreaker. Mello landed a frog splash, but missed a second attempt, eating Trouble in Paradise for a false finish. Boat started giving Williams tips ringside, but Mello pushed Trick backwards into Boat and the ring post, hitting first 48 back inside, looking like he was going to beat the champion. Until Baron Corbin made a surprise return out of absolutely nowhere, pulling him off the top rope for the disqualification, destroying Trick and also hitting End of Days on both guys. Corbin then actually, somehow, in the year of our Lord 2026, received holy shit chants from this crowd. He held up the title, dropped it on Williams, and then exited. All right, let's start with the match. Excellent work. Mello and Ilya Dragunov always get the best out of Trick, and that was happening again here. By the way, where the hell is Ilya Dragunov? It seemed like Hayes was going to beat Williams and earn his number 1 contendership at SummerSlam, so for the match to end in disqualification was disappointing. Though I guess technically, Mello still beat Trick.
To beat the champion, to be able to beat the champion. That doesn't make any sense.
Regardless, fans were hyped for both guys. The match did exactly what it was supposed to do. The Corbin return had been rumored. I believe most of us who heard about it expected he would be under the Danhausen sheet. He'd be like the Frankenstein monster that he was creating. So for Corbin to inject himself into this match, it was intriguing. And while it probably shocked all of you like it shocked me, the dude getting holy shit chance in 2026, it proved that WWE made the right decision inserting him into this so he could make an impact. Plus, End of Days still remains a top-tier finisher, and he hit both of them perfectly. As I've said many times in the past, Corbin's a legit dude. I buy him as a valuable mid-carder who can wrestle, speak, he can do it all. It was always about his poor booking, such as not sticking with bum-ass Corbin long enough and all the other dreadful gimmicks he's had before that. As for the negatives, Corbin's new theme is horrible, which is par for the course these days, and it's quite crazy because he has 3 WWE themes in his coffer before this, and all of them are great, including the Burn the Ships theme when he departed out of NXT. But they're not using any of those 3. They're doing a new one that sucks. I presume this will become a multi-man title match at SummerSlam involving these 4 at a minimum. That would allow Trick and Mello to hold off their feud for later in their careers, which I hope, because that needs to be deep and involved. We discussed that last week. So on Friday, this gets a good. The Vision sans Paul Heyman, but with Maxine Dupree in tow. They all hit the ring wearing all black. I'm not entirely sure what happened. It seemed like Maxine did not know whether she should start speaking. Either way, Alpha Academy came down seconds later without their music to confront her, so Dupree sent the guys out as Akira Tozawa led the promo, saying Austin Theory is wrong for her. She said she still loves them, which received an easy "you sold out" chant, as she reminded that they gave her an ultimatum. Otis, who again needs to shave his head. It looks horrible, bro. He said Theory is a bad guy, and in a Chris Farley-like way, he seemed prepared to profess his love for her. Theory interrupted by laughing at him on the mic, running down his weight and looks, saying the fans are losers just like Otis. None of them would ever be able to get a woman like her. Otis pulled Theory over the top rope into the ring, but Braun Breaker assisted, yeeting Tozawa over the announce table and then double-teaming Otis, who somehow murked both of them. Dupree stopped him from attacking Theory in the corner, saying he should have talked to her about this earlier. But as she did that and feigned as if she might kiss him, she slowly rotated his back toward Theory, who low-blowed him as Maxine laughed in his face. Tozawa got some licks back on Theory, only for Breaker to cut Tozawa in half. Visually, but in a literal sense. His body folded in half. Theory then hit Otis with brass knuckles in a haymaker, calling him a loser before Breaker hit a quadruple rope run spear to end the segment. People are going to be upset about Breaker getting his ass kicked by Otis initially. Just remember, The Rock sold his tail off for all types of low and mid-carders in his entire career before ultimately prevailing just like Braun did in this segment. This started incredibly rough with Maxine twice stumbling on the mic and Tozawa struggling himself. Once Otis started speaking, though, it was smooth sailing the rest of the way. It's quite remarkable how he has remained so over after all of these years and time not being used on television. Now, I'd have preferred them doing something other than the suppressed feelings concept, which is trite. I always looked at them as brother and sister, Otis and Maxine, but it worked for the segment. It was somewhat surprising that there was not a Chad Gable save. I suppose the excuse is he was preparing for the number 1 contendership. The keys here were Theory and Dupree, who both excelled. It was Austin's best character segment, probably since he got called up to the main roster. And while cameras missed the initial facial turn of Maxine, her proving to be a full heel with agency over her decisions, not a reluctant one simply siding with a bad guy, that was important too. It was a bit odd to see Breaker take a temporary backseat to Theory, but WWE is doing what it had not to this point in the faction. They're taking time to develop Theory as a meaningful, valuable, perhaps even equal member. Breaker is 28 years old. He's going to be heavily featured for a decade. It's okay if he works backward for a couple of months to help get someone else over. I see people whining and complaining about Breaker and Fatu not being rocket strapped, but they're not acknowledging that Femi and Williams are getting that treatment right now. You can't just elevate everyone at the exact same time. I still believe that Theory is better as a face, but as we say all the time, the best way to eventually turn someone face is to go full diabolical, unrepentant heel first. This was an uber successful segment, a huge step in the right direction for Theory and the Vision, which feel refreshed. They feel like they matter. And if they can get Bronson Reed back, all of a sudden, that is a real faction on Raw that you need to look out for no matter what division you're in. This was good. Heyman backstage applauded the Vision, saying he's not just ecstatic, but proud of the whole faction. Theory asked if that meant that they were all back together, but Heyman said, Dupree was so magnificent. What the hell do you need me for? It's an interesting direction to take. Possibly Heyman ceding the managerial duties to Dupree. What I wonder is whether the Vision can keep Heyman as an advisor, or perhaps Maxine can use him as a mentor. So that way, he's not involved with them day to day, but when the situation calls for it, Heyman gets brought in to negotiate a contract, advise her how to manipulate someone, whatever the case might be. That would be an extremely interesting direction to take, something unique that WWE has never done before. Even if this was a handoff, it's fine. But the potential of them doing something deeper with Heyman in an overseer type of role, an advisory role, a mentorship type of role, to me, that would take this to another level. Bayley invited Lyra Valkyria out to the ring for a planned face-to-face. Valkyria entered without makeup again, wearing a long, torn-up sweater. Bayley thought they should take the opportunity to say what they mean and apologize to each other, but Lyra immediately snapped at her, saying she's the only one who needs to apologizing for holding her back for an entire year. Valkyria said Bayley's not the only one who had friends stab her in the back, but Lyra doesn't make it her personality. Valkyria said every positive thing she ever said about Bayley was a lie. She's not a locker room leader. She's a doormat. Her face does not belong on the posters. She drags down her friends and partners, and she was always the worst 4 horsewomen, the latter of which got a huge reaction, the rest, a little reaction. Bayley said Lyra is not special. Then she ran through her impressive resume, saying she was going to add to her accomplishments by beating her ass inside Madison Square Garden. This led to a brawl, with Valkyria getting emotional as she stomped Bayley's head into the canvas and hit a standing Bayley to belly. I am not sure that I personally love Lyra's new character, but I do appreciate that she's getting an opportunity to show something other than hardworking babyface who has a lot of bad luck, which was basically her entire main roster career to this point. And I recognize that others do like this character a lot, which is great. I'm glad that you do. Considering the status of Ripley and the WWE Championship is completely up in the air, it is tough to understand why this is booked for Saturday night's main event instead of SummerSlam. But considering the reaction was solid but not particularly hot, I'm not going to sit here and say WWE made the wrong decision in that regard. Plus, who knows? Maybe the Saturday night's main event booking will lead to a rematch for one reason or another at the bigger show. Both spoke well, Lyra especially, among her best promos on the main roster and a taste of what she showed us in NXT. The character work was on point for her again, even if it was not to my specific taste. And ultimately, they have what is going to be the second biggest match on that card Saturday night. Plus, it still feels like this is an entry point for Tatum Paxley. All of that is obviously good. Big Cass, Big Bill, W. Morrissey, who knows what name he will go by. He received a teaser for a WWE return on the Raw after SummerSlam. It was around the concept of everyone saying he was a can't-miss prospect, but apparently they were wrong about him. It was fine. Seemed to indicate that he will not be back in a happy-go-lucky comedy tag team with Enzo Amore as most assumed, considering Enzo has been seen training at the WWE Performance Center. Perhaps they will be a more serious tag team. Perhaps Enzo will manage Bill while sometimes wrestling on his own. That could play. It's ungradable, but you know what? The fact that he got anything is a huge positive. WWE posted an online exclusive after SmackDown to follow up on the Blake Monroe attacks. It was a full segment that was clearly cut for TV time. Tiffany Stratton said she would stay 2 steps ahead of the heels to ensure that the title remains on her shoulder. She also suggested going after a second title, so Chelsea Green came in, assuming she meant the tag team titles. And while Tiffy at first was resistant to that, she actually became all about it. Irresistible Forces returned, claiming they were going after the titles too, and when they departed, so did Tiffy. That left Chelsea prone to being attacked from behind by Blake, who threw her into a road case and then introduced herself. Now look, I am not saying that 2 beautiful blonde women cannot exist on the same show, but they were literally both wearing white tops and pink skirts in this segment. It was like a magic trick, where Stratton exited stage right and Monroe entered stage left, and you thought they might be the same person. There was no follow-up with Julia or Kiana James from last week's attack. Jordan Grace is still not on TV, which goes back to what I've been saying for months. Why the hell is Blake on SmackDown? WWE did well to enhance a barren division. Now it is overloaded on a 2-hour show, whereas Raw is badly suffering from lack of numbers to the point that Liv hasn't even defended the title since SummerSlam. They lost Asuka. Raquel and Roxy are in the Judgment Day vortex, so they're not operating independently. Stephanie Vaquer is out injured. They need women on that show. And you're introducing all these new women to SmackDown, but they're not even getting on TV. Julia, Grace, Monroe, any of them could have been moved over to Raw. They could at least get on TV and wrestle regularly. Why are there so many women not being used on a short show? Also, in terms of what they're doing on SmackDown, if Blake is attacking everyone, to what end does that work? Are her attacks going to lead to Tiffy, a different person, putting her title on the line in a multi-woman match at SummerSlam? Otherwise, everyone on the roster is going to be out to get Monroe, who doesn't have a title and is not specifically targeting champions either. I'm confused as to what the purpose and goal of this is right now. If it's to establish that Blake doesn't take shit from anyone and she's a badass who's violent and is willing to fight, okay, cool. I got to believe there's better ways to get about it. This is not gradable because it did not happen on television. And frankly, I don't even know what I would grade it, because it was simultaneously positive, getting a lot of women in a segment, but negative where she attacked Chelsea and she looked exactly like the person who's Chelsea's teammate at this point. So who the hell knows? Anyway, that wraps up this week in WWE. Before we fully get out of the show, I will briefly go over the SummerSlam card as it currently stands. World Heavyweight Championship, Roman Reigns defending against Seth Rollins. WWE Championship, CM Punk defending against Cody Rhodes. Obafemi against Brock Lesnar inside Hell in a Cell. Women's World Championship, Liv Morgan against Io Sky. Intercontinental Championship, Penta against Chad Gable, and a 6-man tag team match, the Usos and Jacob Fatu against LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, and Royce Keys. That is not bad so far. Matches we believe are going to happen: Gunther versus Nick Aldis, Charlotte Flair versus Jade Cargill. I think we're going to get a United States Championship, Trick Williams, Carmelo Hayes, Baron Corbin, and Ricky Saints. Maybe they can get Ilya Dragunov back too and involve him in there, make it a 5-way. That'd be awesome. And then there's the 2 tag team feuds that are bubbling up. I'm guessing those are not going to make the card. I can't imagine why they would. The Vision against Alpha Academy, and then Damian Priest and R-Truth against the War Raiders, which really should be happening this week. They've been talking about it for so long. So that is where SummerSlam stands with, let me do a quick count. I want to say 5 total episodes remaining. That should be correct. Yeah, 5 episodes of TV left, only 4 real ones because the Go Home SmackDown is 24 hours before night 1. And there is still going to be a ton to discuss when it comes to WWE, both this week and moving forward. So let me remind you that on Thursday, Vintage Chris Vanini will be back on the show. We will do your WWE Saturday night's main event preview. We'll cover every single match on the card with predictions and more. And he will also provide his opinions on the major storylines in WWE over the last week. Certainly what we covered in the main event, but some from the good, the bad, and the ugly as well. We'll talk NXT and AEW on that show. So it will be a loaded Thursday episode. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you are a first-time listener. On the way out, allow the Silver King to remind you first that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about the five.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show on YouTube. You can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews, the link in our profile. You can join our Slack channel, talk about wrestling all week with our listeners. You can also subscribe to the podcast and much more. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast. Thank you all for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. This is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.